This is part 2 of my color correction video tutorial. In part 1, we covered how to do all our color corrections using Adobe Camera Raw in Adobe Lightroom. In part 2 here, I've exported that same file from Lightroom into Photoshop as a TIFF file, and now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use all the adjustment layers and the controls available to us in Photoshop to make essentially the same color corrections. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I'm going to start with a curves adjustment layer, and like I said in Lightroom, you can hold down the Option key on a Mac, and I believe it's the Alt key on a PC, and you can move the slider here, and it'll show you where you're starting to lose details and your channels are starting to blow out. Let me show you just real fast. We can see that definitely we've lost all the detail in the background on the white here and along here, and the skin tones are starting to lose detail there, and we don't want that because then you end up with really weird looking skin tones. So let's go ahead and back that off. I think right about here is where I want it. I just want to barely lose a little bit of detail there on the side of her leg, and I can do the same thing with the black points, just like in Lightroom. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up to the point I'm starting to lose just a little bit and back it off slightly. And I lost some detail back here in the background, but I'm okay with that because it's just a background. And lastly, I'm going to go ahead and brighten up the image overall with a point in the middle of the curve here, and click OK. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add another curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to fill that in, and I'm going to paint in on the layer mask there with white to reveal, and I'm doing that real fast just so that I can bring up the brightness on her face without affecting the rest of the image. I just want to brighten that up some. This is basically my dodge burn using curves trick. If you've read my blog, that's one of the tricks. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go to color balance now, probably the least used tool in Photoshop, at least by most people. As a professional color correction technician at professional color labs for a very long time, this was the only tool available to me, basically. We had a version of this, and you just got used to using it. To most people, it's probably still very confusing. Basically, we can tell here by moving the slider obviously towards red, the image gets more red, and in turn it gets less cyan. So red and cyan are basically offsetting each other here. So if we know that we have kind of a cyan cast, just add red and it takes that out. And in this cast I still see a lot of yellow, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move the blue slider up until I'm happy with it. So I see I've taken out some of that blue cast. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing just a little bit differently on the highlights here until I'm happy with the skin tone. And it's just, you have to eyeball this. It's basically just kind of something you have to get used to doing. And if you're not sure what the skin tone should look like, you just bring up your reference image. That's why we use a reference image. I even use one. In this case, I already know what the image should look like. I know what her skin tone should be. So I'm not going to use my reference image. So let's go ahead and click OK with that. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to add one more curves adjustment layer because I see a color cast on her arm. And again, I went ahead and filled in the mask, and I'm just going to reveal it on just her arm here. And let me go ahead. I'm going to brighten that up just a little bit, and I'm going to switch to the green channel here and bring down the greens here. I'm just trying to offset a little bit of the kind of green cast from our fluorescent overhead lights because, again, if you watched part 1, I didn't have something to create a custom white balance, so I have this color cast from these fluorescent lights that I don't like. So let's go ahead. I'm going to adjust that one more time just to brighten up the arm just a little more, and click OK. And I may have painted outside the line slightly. All you have to do, because we have the layer mask, is just switch to the black brush and paint back in where you went out of the lines. And it's simple as that. That's one of the really nice things of working with adjustment layers and layer masks. Let's go ahead. Let me quickly show you basically levels. Levels is kind of a dumb version of curves. It does the same thing with the sliders when you hold down the Option or Alt key. Generally with levels, I just like to use the levels just for a little bit of overall brightness in the center here, and occasionally to do a color correction using one of those specific channels, but very, very infrequently compared to using curves and color balance. Brightness contrast, I generally do that with curves, just like I did in the first step. Hue and saturation. I do use saturation just a little bit, but if you add too much saturation, especially in images with skin tones, then you start to really lose the skin tones. Like here, her skin is starting to go orange and it looks unnatural. That's why I generally try not to use it very much. We can go with just a little bit. I do use hue saturation occasionally to do things like selective color adjustments. Like in this case, I can tweak the color of her top there, or I can saturate or desaturate the blues just a little bit if I want to. Obviously, something that you can do is also do colorization like this. In my duotone actions, this is one of the steps. So let's go ahead, let's OK that. And one quick trick with curves, oops, wrong layer there. One quick trick with curves is by holding the Command key on a Macintosh, I believe it's the Control key on a PC, you can add a point directly to the curve exactly where that is on your image. So if I want to adjust just this part of the color here, I can add a point and it shows me right where that is and it puts it right on the curve. And that works with any of the channels. If you just want to see where the color falls, you can do the same thing using the Option or Alt key and it just shows you where it's at, but it doesn't add the point. Lastly, let's go ahead and add that last curves adjustment layer and make this image match the Lightroom version by warming up the wood tone there. Let's go ahead and fill that in and paint in the floor here. I've got the wrong color going. Okay. And that looks just like the version that we had in Lightroom now. Again, the nice thing of working with adjustment layers, I can go back and edit this if I don't like it. And obviously, I mean, I can have infinite a number of adjustment layers doing different things for me. Anyways, let's take a quick look before and after. That was before, obviously dark and dingy and had the color cast. Now it's much brighter, much nicer, and much more natural. And we have neutral whites. Anyways, don't forget to watch part 1 of this video if you didn't watch it already. Obviously, check out the rest of my videos, youtube.com/modifiedphoto, and my blog, modifiedphoto.wordpress.com. Thanks for watching.